It's Matt.
And Lowell.
And we're here with another Macabre Monthly. It is May, and so I think this comes out, I think we posted the last one like right at the, beginning of May. Maybe missed April by like a day.
Yeah, it's still monthly.
Yeah, that's okay.
Monthly-ish.
Yeah, life happens. And that said, we are talking about video games today. A lot of us at Macabre Daily have been partaking in Evil Dead, the video game, or the game. Is it the video game or just the game?
I mean, there was an Evil Dead 2 board game. I don't know what it is. I just call it the Evil Dead video game.
It's almost like Spaceballs, like they had like Spaceballs, the towel kit.
The merchandise.
Yeah, the merchandise, yeah. But the Evil Dead game came out last week, and we've been playing it. And I think enjoying it.
Yeah, it's like a lot of asymmetrical multiplayer games. I kind of don't really know what I'm doing at first, and there's not a lot of hand holding. And I didn't know that the only way to get XP is to play with people online. So I've been playing surrounded by AI bots, and I'm having fun, but like, why am I still level 1?
Yeah,
I would like to be more powerful. Yeah. Which I don't mind. I do that with Avengers, but like, I still level up.
Yeah.
So
you definitely want to level up, especially if you're playing with yourself.
Yes.
But there it had to happen. It had to happen. It's just simmering on.
He has to get it out, folks. So we're gonna be here all night.
Yeah, it's like a form of well, I'm not gonna say that. That's not Tourette's. But
I like the game.
Yes,
I do. I just wish I knew that piece of information before I sunk so many hours into it. But I'm gonna sink more into it, and I'm gonna get more powerful. So
yeah,
it's all right. Better
watch out. Watch out, all you the age range. I imagine this probably
12-year-old demon players who are going to murk us all just like that.
I think playing as the demon is quite difficult. I'm not a big. I haven't done it enough times to really feel good about it, but I definitely enjoy it more than Friday the 13th. I will say that. I found Friday the 13th to be like, I feel like I got in too late, and by that time, like I just didn't enjoy. You couldn't ever be Jason, and I didn't really enjoy playing the camp counselors. Because I feel like it's a game you play with people because it doesn't, requires a bit more coordination. Whereas Evil Dead, like I think I've talked to like 3 people. I'm not much of a game talker anyway, so it's not a.
Yeah, I like to say I'm not a huge gamer, but I feel like at this point in my life, I own more video games than I have ever had at one point for one given system in my life. So.
I'm definitely a gamer. I don't know if I'm like much of a talker though. Like like online stuff, like interacting with other
Oh no, I don't need to know your life story.
Yeah.
I just need to know that you're gonna get to that waypoint so I can stay over here and get the day.
And that's what I think Evil Dead gets right, is that it's a lot of fun to play as the survivors, but you also don't have to be like working that well together because you're all trying to do the same thing. Anyway. That came out, and I'm dragging this on to say that what we're talking about is not that, because we just did, but rather our top 5 horror video games. So we're gonna figure out what's on that list for each of us, and more importantly, discuss why the other person's choices do or do not suck. So yeah, it's a hard one.
Really hard.
Very hard. Very, very firm on this list, though. But anyways, we'll get to our top 5 as we always do. We'll start with what we've been watching. So, what have you been watching?
I watched The Curse. Not The Curse. I wish I watched
The Curse. Was good. Check out their review on Macabre Daily.
Yeah, but I instead watched Cursed, which I reviewed for Screen Factory because they just put out a new collector's edition. It doesn't include the infamous Cursed cut that was the previous entire film that they shot. But look, Screen Factory knows what they're doing. They know what they're putting out. They know that in this case it's an autopsy instead of a movie. The movie itself,
like a historical artifact at this point of like what could go wrong.
Yeah, absolutely, and it is because they interview Patrick Lussier, Craven's longtime editor and director of My Bloody Valentine 3D and a writer-director in his own right. And he's basically like, here's what happened from my point of view. And he's a great raconteur. He's a great storyteller. It's really interesting to hear him talk. But that is really the only reason worth seeing this movie.
Yeah.
I say movie because it's barely a movie. And I mean, especially after our Wes Craven episode, it's depressing.
Yeah.
It's like, and you can tell that it is one of the most compromised pieces of work, I guess. A lot of air quotes for this thing ever.
Because it's not literal in any sense.
It's just like, they stopped trying to make a movie a long time ago and just slap some stuff together so they can make some money. And you can tell that it is not indicative of the talents of the people who are credited in it and to it at all. At all. So maybe skip the movie, but if you just have to own that Scream Factory Blu-ray, there's like a half-hour interview with Patrick Lussier, which is fascinating. That movie is trash.
I mean, come to think of it, as you were talking, I thought that Wes Craven and Tobe Hooper are at least two that I can name who did not necessarily go out on a high note when it came to their filmographies. I think largely because they died somewhat young. I think they're both in their 60s when they died.
I think Craven was in his early 70s, but he had more, he had more crest than valleys. Tobe Hooper, debatable, but it's funny. Like 10 years ago, when Scream 4 came out, I was working as a PA in a production office, and I was talking to this guy who was a horror fan, and he's like, "Yeah, like I love Wes Craven. I'm excited for the new Scream, but it just kind of feels like he compromises on everything.
Yeah.
Like he just does whatever the Weinsteins say." And I'm like, "Hey, no, but not a hard no."
Yeah, like you're right, but I don't want to admit you're right.
And it's like, but not entirely right.
No.
I mean, like, the first two Scream movies are fantastic, but it's just why. After the experience of making Cursed, why did he and Kevin Williamson go back and make Scream 4? Maybe
it's like a go back, like we had to do this again. Like we didn't get to make the movie we wanted to make together before. Let's give it another shot. Plus, I don't know.
That makes me feel better.
I mean, listen, I'm a glass half, whatever. Not necessarily full or empty. Just there's a glass there. But
okay.
Like I get the sense that there was compromise, but I feel like that's also part of working in the system. You just hope that you don't have to compromise that much, but ultimately, it sucks.
Yeah, it does. But what doesn't suck, which I also watched this past month, or actually a few days ago, was The Sadness.
Oh yeah, I've seen a lot about this, but I haven't.
It's basically Garth Ennis's Crossed in Asia, which isn't a bad thing, and it's not entirely like Crossed. Crossed is a comic about a virus that causes people to act it's like the mayhem virus. They lose all their impulses, but they become just their base selves, and they're violent, like their most violent selves come out. So it's not about like eating people and eating brains necessarily. Maybe it is for some people, but it's just, excuse me, we're infected.
Impulsive behavior.
Yeah, we're gonna do the most fucked up shit you can imagine. And and I go back to Mayhem because that was the virus in Mayhem too, but it was like to a comedic effect.
Yeah.
This is like really, really messed up, but I liked it.
Okay.
And when it was over, I had two immediate thoughts. One, George Romero would really like that ending. Like zombie. A lot of people steal from Romero, but they don't really steal from his endings. And I wouldn't say this one stole from his endings, but this one understood why a lot of his endings worked, and I appreciate it. And number two, the American remake of this is going to suck.
Wait, they're already remaking
so
it?
hard. No, but if and when they do, and I think it will happen eventually in some form or another, it's going to be terrible, because as bloody and violent and savage and insane as this film is, it's not like, The Devil's Rejects, or I always go back to Rob Zombie on this thing, but it's not
something deep rooted there.
It has an idea, it has a purpose, almost like French extremism. Not like that terrible and nihilistic. Like, you're gonna have a good time, I should say, but like the director, the people making this know what movie they're making, and they know how to shoot what they're shooting and they deliver the desired effect, as opposed to like, here's some fucked up shit, everybody have fun.
Yeah, I've been like kind of noodling on this idea, something to write up about how people call a lot of movies bonkers nowadays, but they're mostly just referring to how
bonkers,
violent
yeah.
they are,
Mhm.
or just how much they're trying to provoke you. But ultimately, that means nothing if you don't have something good behind it. Like, you know, being provocative for provocateur's sake is not necessarily a good movie. Obviously, it's subjective, but yeah, I've been hearing good things about this one, but it is, you know, not. But now at this point, I feel like the hype's so high that I have to let it simmer or something.
I mean, I can't even begin to describe some of the things that happened in this. I'd say just dive into it, because I mean, it's on my 10 best of the year so far list.
Okay. We're about halfway.
Yeah,
near that point.
I don't think it's number one or going to be number one, but like, I at least appreciated it, and I'd like to talk to someone else about it, because oh my god. And that's another thing.
Hit up Lowell's DMs if you want to talk sadness.
The sadness, and there's a reason why it's called the sadness, which is also really messed up, and it's really good. But you will exclaim a lot. There's a lot of, I think at one point I just went, oh no, oh no, movie, like what?
Yeah,
like I'm watching my dog just like poop and on the floor. I was just like, oh, it's happening.
Yeah.
Which in the sadness's case isn't a bad thing. But
yeah, it's probably, it sounds like the least bad thing that would happen in that movie is a dog shitting on the carpet.
Yeah, pretty much.
So high recommend on the sadness.
Yes.
Okay.
What about you?
Well, you know, not as much as normal. But I did see The Northman.
Oh yes, yeah, I love it.
It's not really a horror movie, but it is kind of a horror movie in its own way.
It's about man's inhumanity to man.
Yeah,
and there's some mystic shit in there.
So, yeah. It's like I'll put it in the category, and I think it belongs. But I dug it quite a bit. Didn't know what to expect. Totally went in very kind of ignorant to trailers and anything, and just entirely delighted by it. Great thing to see in the theater too. I feel like there are some movies that just beckon you to see them outside of your home, particularly if you live in a very noisy place like New York, or anywhere that's a major metropolitan, or maybe just live near a train. Who knows? Whatever that's your life, right? But I really dug it, and probably my favorite Eggers movie so far.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But I think it's only because like The Witch to me is something that I don't really feel the need to go back to a lot, whereas like I could kind of see The Northman being some odd comfort food, and The Lighthouse I still don't get it. But you know,
comfort. It's an interesting choice of words. Okay.
I mean, there's because it just exists this really kind of ethereal landscape where the whole thing, like if you try and take it as real, you're not going to enjoy it. You're going to try to be thinking about all the things that don't feel real and explaining plot holes, and instead of just letting it happen to you. So anyway, high recommend on that one. And then a bunch of older ones. I did watch Christine again after our Carpenter episode.
Oh yeah.
I still feel the same. I'm very middle of the road on it. Very like.
That's fair.
And I think it's because there's a perfectly good ending, like at 3/4 way of the movie. Like once like the car like kind of turns on him, or like he's kind of gone fully into it, and like he dies, and then the movie keeps going. We're talking about the main character who's like
that's mostly at the end. I mean, there's maybe 10 minutes left. That is like the final scene or next to the final scene.
Maybe it's something else that I'm thinking about, or I'm just totally off my rocker. But both are possible. Both could be true. But yeah, still felt very like it's better than most movies, but as judges a Carpenter movie, didn't feel as wild about it.
Still better than.
Oh yeah, I'll take that. I'd rather watch Christine over half the things I'm asked to watch. And not naming names, just just a lot of junk out there. But I watched this other movie, but it's well intentioned, so you know it's good trash. But Spider Labyrinth. This is one that is it's one of those like you can't really find it necessarily because it hasn't really gotten like a release since like DVD, and the DVD's long out of print. Anyway, I found a shoddy copy of it because I've been hearing good things about it, and it's kind of like a giallo monster movie. And if that sounds at all appealing, then you're probably gonna like it.
Honestly, it just sounds like you just made all of this up.
And it does, but
did you go to the cursed Frogurt store to buy a dusty VHS of this?
I did, and a person named Pamela Kruger sold it to me, and we'll tie it all together. But like it's pretty good if you can find a copy of it. Not to say that it's some like elusive, like this is not a humble flex. It's more just like a lot of bootlegs is probably the best way to find it. Can't obviously promote that, but find them if you can. Support local business, I guess. But I would definitely recommend.
It can't all wind up on Shudder like with it.
Exactly. Not everyone gets a distribution deal. But I would definitely recommend seeking it out. And again, it's kind of a weird monster movie that has a giallo happening in it at the same time. The way it all kind of ties up doesn't really make a lot of sense, as is per most giallo movies, but it's really entertaining. And the last 45 minutes are, when I say bonkers, I read legitimately bonkers. Like you have not seen something like this before. And whether that's not violent or just absurd, it's just kind of absurd. It's not really gross, but absurd.
I'll take it.
Yeah. And then another one was Girls Night Out, which I did review for the site.
Oh, is that the one with the slasher and the bear suit?
Yeah.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah. Well, no, not really. You find out pretty quickly that there's it's on the cover, so
okay.
It's part of the sales material.
It's a light spoiler alert. I mean,
like
that's probably why you're checking out this movie.
Yeah, it's like spoiler with aspartame. Like it's not real. But But yeah, it's not great. I guess it's just like it's 1982. It doesn't feel like it was made like to be a slasher movie, just kind of by accident, because the deaths happen so fast and everything happens so fast. Like the moments of peril and danger that are usually long and drawn out, he seemed to happen relatively quickly. And most movies spent just watching these college kids get drunk, which, hey, that's entertaining enough, but I want to see gore, mayhem, all the things. And it's like, it's 1982 at this point when this movie came out. So it's not like it was in the heyday, but at the same time, given that, it is much better than most of the movies that are coming out after this point. And
peak.
Yeah, and if you're like an enthusiast who's like, I must watch all the slashers, then you could do much worse than this one. And Arrow's got a nice Blu-ray out of it. Film transfer's a little rough, but that's probably because this is a movie that I think if I read correctly, there's like no negatives of it. So they just had to like piece together all the, theatrical prints that they had. And then so anyway.
It's sad. You hear a killer in a bear costume, and there's so many things that can be if it just wants to, but this doesn't sound like it does. No,
it doesn't. And it's very very of its time in that like some of the misogyny is very like, it's
an 80s slasher film.
Oh yeah, it doesn't. I don't hold any ill will against it as much as more just like it's just more noticeable now because like that's not even though we all watch those movies as younger and still do like you become accustomed to whatever the current climate of things is, and so it does stand out in that way. But also it's like part of the motivation, which is kind of weird. So it's not as like mean as it could be in that regard. Like if it's really trying to be what it's setting out to be. But again, you could waste 90 minutes worse ways. I can guarantee it.
Thanks, Arrow.
But if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't know that these things are out there. So on that note, on what's out there, let's hit up some news because as I think we've shared before, we are part of a website that has a lot of stuff. We are. And if you have forgotten what this is actually called, where this Macabre Monthly comes from, well, meet our brother Daily. I handpicked a couple of things that had happened over the month and just kind of figured we can chat about them. The first one is Living Dead at Manchester Moor coming to 4K Blu-ray. So I have two questions for you on this. One, have you seen it? And two, what are your thoughts about quick releases from Blu-ray editions to 4K editions now that we're seem to be in the peak of rebuying?
I haven't seen it, but I don't mind if the turnaround is quick if they add a little something to it. I mean, it's basically how I felt about Blu-ray when it came out. You know, like I was fine with DVDs, and then Blu-rays were coming out, but then Blu-rays were better because they were one disc instead of two. In some cases, they looked better. It was slimmer, so there's more space on your shelf. So, I mean, if it's just like a double dip, like the Escape from LA 4K was, where it's just the movie and nothing.
Which I bought. Like I'm a cuck for
No,
all those like fucking special editions. Like
I know,
especially if it's like but I do. I mean, I had Escape from New York up last time. Escape from LA. So like this is like
oh shit, I didn't even notice that.
Yeah, like so like
that
I'm
Escape from LA poster.
yeah, I'm a fan. So I will not rebuy Escape from LA in 4K. I don't need that. Scream Factory's edition was plenty.
I could have used a commentary or something with that. I remember being excited when I saw the poster, but then when I saw the specs, I was like, this is so bare bones. I know it's not as popular as New York, but give us something. Jesus.
Yeah.
That's just me.
I agree. Have you seen this though?
No, I have not.
So I mean, I actually dig the fuck out of this movie. But the reason I asked the second question because I believe this movie just came out on like a special edition Blu-ray like last year. Like it's buried in here. Yeah, shelf. It's buried in here.
Blu-ray and 4K shelf.
No, there's a DVD section. It's just it's hiding in the corner waiting to expire. But like it's a really good movie, and it's one I would definitely say is one of the most interesting zombie movies at the time. But I do take a bit of issue, like, and again, this is not, not anyone's fault. Everyone's a business. I realize this, but not a lot of new stuff. And that to me, I don't know, just like a missed opportunity. If you're going to ask for another $50.
Yeah, seriously.
But this is not to besmirch Synapse. I will probably end up buying this, and I could somehow find a way to trade in my other one at some point. But yeah,
I mean, yes, the going from Blu-ray to 4K, it's an obvious upgrade. But if you want me to invest the money in a new disc, like it better be much. But like if it's something like Terminator 2 or The Revenant going from Blu-ray to 4K, I'll take that leap even if there's no special feature, no new special features. But like, give us a little something else.
And sometimes I do wonder, because I realize there's like a bit of irony in this, like, is that sometimes there's only so much you can talk about certain movies just because there's not enough people to talk about them,
Yeah.
So I always do wonder kind of this balance of like, and how much of this sometimes feels like cash grab, but anyway.
I mean, I'll take fan commentaries if they're interesting. Like the Warriors imprint.
That's on the way.
It's in the mail. Yeah, I should get it tomorrow.
I saw that coming in as well.
I can't wait. And that has 2 fan commentaries by like, film critics and scholars. But like I've been waiting for a special edition of the Warriors forever.
But do you mean you've been waiting for a theatrical cut?
You know what? At this point, I would take the director's cut because it's the one that's out there, and like I look. It's a great movie. I can deal with the comic book transitions, but it's not like I'm chomping at the bit for it.
Yeah.
But maybe some more stuff from Walter Hill, and there will be new interviews with people on it.
I would love at some point for Criterion to do like a Walter Hill box set. Because he's kind of the perfect person for a Criterion edition. He has enough schlock and enough like quality classic, material in his filmography where
you can mix and match.
It's heavy on the action, which they tend to not do as much. Like, again, as we see the shifting Shaft is getting a 4K release. Obviously Shaft has a lot of cultural implications as far as its own importance in blaxploitation cinema, but either way, I would be interested to see like how these boutique labels start to adapt, or some of these more film school-esque labels start to adopt some of the
genre.
Yeah. So did you read this? The new favorite horror movies by state?
No.
Okay.
But what is?
I don't know.
Jewel?
I looked it
For
up.
New York?
I believe it is. Yeah,
Is
I
it
can't remember.
Bollywood?
I don't remember if it's Bollywood or if it's something somewhere else, but I'd never heard of it. Oh wait, no, I take that back. It's Korean. It's Thirst. It's the movie Thirst from.
Park Chan-wook.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Oh my God, I knew it would come to me eventually. Yeah, that was kind of struck me as odd. So for those that don't know, we're based in New York, and obviously
we're the coastal elites you've heard about.
Yes, of course. Bow down before our tiny apartments. Yeah, I was a bit surprised by this one because it's kind of an obscure movie in a lot of ways. Like still, even though the director is not so much anymore.
Yeah, honestly, this whole thing could just be a lie.
Yeah.
Like it could, like, where's the data on this? I need to see the double-blinded study that tells me that most of California even knows what Theater of Blood is about.
Like, part of me wants to believe that, like, why isn't Texas Chainsaw Massacre for Texas, or like The Devil's Rejects, or something that feels uniquely Texas?
Well, maybe that's too obvious. And
but it goes back when he does. I mean, it's like Guillermo del Toro, so like obviously you're close to the border, but like that really represents like, you know, the bottom half of Texas.
Also, Colorado is the shining. Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, I don't know.
Come on.
I did read into some of the methodology here, but it kind of felt like this was based off of like only like a limited amount of like streaming data, which is would explain why like a lot of these are things you could probably find pretty easily on stream. Like 10 Cloverfield Lane is really the favorite horror movie of any place. No,
I know people love it, but
favorite.
And like,
bullshit.
Like, hey, Oregon has Shudder.
Frankenstein, maybe because of the aging population. Maybe. But Nevada is freaks? Really?
Nice try.
Yeah, neither
hotdog.com. Jesus Christ.
I know. This is not shade. This is just a heavy leveling of umbrella. So I saw this news about in the fan film, The Slayer Massacre. Did you watch the trailer for this?
I did not, but honestly, just looking at this graphic, I can tell it's going to be better than the at least 4 Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies in existence. So I'll check it out.
Yeah, I you know, candidly, like I'm a sucker for these like Kickstarters and like people trying to fund their movies and whatnot. But I did watch the trailer and it just kind of felt like they're just making Texas Chainsaw Massacre again.
Once again, that is like half of the Texas Chainsaw. That's 2/3 of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
But you know, but like the thing I go to is like how many people who are fans of the franchise bemoan that it keeps going back to that. Well, I don't know.
And I
hope it's good. I hope it's like I'm rooting for it.
We
not
always
against
hope
it.
it's good.
Yeah, I'm not rooting against it. But this is a fan film. They're not making any money doing this. This is not like you know, this is a labor of love, which is why like I really want to give it the honest shot. But
and no offense to the people who are actually making it. I'm sure they have a vision and they're excited to do it. And hey, they're making something. What am I doing but sitting on my butt?
And you're not Netflix, so you probably can't fumble it.
Yeah.
Say at least we didn't have the money.
You know? I just, you know, no more prequels to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre in any timeline, please. Please. If there was ever a horror,
maybe we'll get Texas Chainsaw Massacre prehistoric. We can see Leatherface and the Sawyer family.
Fucking fine.
Hunting mammoth.
I mean, if there's ever a film franchise that didn't need a prequel, it's the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Would you watch Leatherface in space? It rolls off the tongue. Say it.
I'd have to. Because I'd have to know what that is like. I'm sure they still.
I don't know why anyone's not doing this yet, but you know, you're welcome to whoever takes this idea.
Now I want to write that movie.
Leatherface in space.
So it's the far future.
Or Leatherface, a space opera.
Make
it a musical.
He can't sing. He can barely talk.
He's a beast, you know, to this.
I mean, maybe if you got Darren Lynn Bousman on it, then it can be a musical.
Yeah, get a Rebo genetic opera situation, which guilty pleasure. I'm not even guilty pleasure. I love that movie, but all right. So good luck. We'll watch it probably. So Dead Space. getting a remake treatment. Did you play that? So you don't
This
have
is
to tell
not-
me. Is this on your list?
No, I've
It's not
never
on
played any of the Dead Space games, not because I didn't want to,
Yeah.
just I didn't know anyone that I could borrow it from at a busy time in my life, but I will definitely check out the remake. They look like a lot of fun, and sci-fi horror isn't really my thing, but it looks like it takes inspiration from Event Horizon
Yeah,
and Alien, of course.
it kind of feels like H.P. Lovecraft meets Resident Evil in space.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool. The first one was a lot of fun. It's definitely very creepy. I mean, I love to see what they're going to do with it. It's very much on brand with our discussion today. So send us review copies, please.
Yes.
Sam Raimi confirms Universal's interested in a Darkman sequel.
I don't believe that.
Yeah.
Let me just tell you right off the bat. I'm sorry. I'm sure they want to be in business with Sam Raimi, and maybe
They want to be in the Raimi business again.
Yeah,
this time.
We all want him back.
I haven't seen Multiverse of Madness yet, but I have a really hard time swallowing the pill that everyone seems to be chucking about how it's Evil Dead in a Marvel movie. I haven't seen it, so I can't say. But that feels like hyperbole.
It's Sam Raimi making an MCU film, and when you recognize things that are distinctly Sam Raimi, it puts a smile on your face, and that's fine.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's totally fine. But maybe he could have made this after Spider-Man 3, or
Maybe
the first
not.
or second Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Well,
Second Spider-Man, definitely.
yeah, but just I'm curious about a Darkman reboot. It can't be worse than Darkman 2 and Darkman 3, Die Darkman Die. And no, I didn't make that up. The subtitle of that movie is Die Darkman.
Isn't the second
Die.
one like the villain's name in
The Return of Durant.
Yeah,
he didn't blow up in that
helicopter. Yeah.
But hey, we like Letter Jake.
Yeah, I mean, I love Darkman. Like, I think it's a cool movie. It's a strange movie, and I would definitely watch another one. But I, like you, am not like, yeah.
And I feel like he made.
Also, does Sam Raimi like have an idea for this? Like,
no, I think what happened was he couldn't make The Shadow.
Yeah,
he wanted to make The Shadow, so he made Darkman, which is fine, and it's different from The Shadow, and it's unique, and I like the character.
And no lie, like, full disclosure, I'm a big fan of The Shadow, the Alec Baldwin one.
Oh, it's fun.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
It's delightful.
It's probably like the best pulpy comic book hero movie that I've seen.
It's like the better version of The Phantom.
Yeah.
Was it kind of weird that like in the early 90s there were like, the comic
Maybe we should go back to the 30s and 40s.
Yeah, like Dick Tracy, The Phantom, The Shadow.
But Dick Tracy came at the start of the 90s, and that was an amazing. I think they won an Academy Award for the makeup of Dick Tracy. I'm pretty sure.
That would not surprise me.
That movie is so good and bad at the same time, but the makeup and the performances alone.
I have to watch it again.
Yeah.
I was always sad that Warren Beatty never tried to make a movie like that ever again. Because
I think it was a huge failure.
Oh, I thought it was a success. No, I remember.
We're gonna find this out.
We'll see.
After the fact.
Google it.
All right, that's the news of the month. So on to the topic of the day. Top 5 video games. So as I think we were saying at the beginning, this was not easy. What was your process?
How do I quantify this?
Yeah.
Okay, so I had 2 rules really.
Only 2?
Well, maybe 3. Okay, I had a few rules. One Resident Evil game, because that's just personal for me.
Yeah,
because
I'm in agreement.
And even though some of them are very different and could be, considered.
There are ones that are definitely better than others.
Yes, and different than others. They're various, but still, like it's not fair to the other genres, I guess you could say. Also, I consider this really specifically horror games, like games of the horror genre, not games with like horror moments or horror movie moments. So I just, spoiler alert, I did not include BioShock or The Last of Us, even though those are 2 of the greatest games ever made. Excuse me, BioShock Infinite as well, just because to me there's so much more than this specific genre. So I just really considered games that were scary, that made you feel a sense of like you know, like while you're playing them, like, and that does what horror does best consistently in the video game format.
I agree with your first rule. Resident Evil only gets one, even though that was
That
really
was hard.
difficult. That was
really hard.
And
Yeah.
that's like, I don't know about you. That was the first horror game I played that I really remember being affected by. So anyway, I agree with that rule. My other rule, I didn't necessarily subscribe to your rule about, I took a more broad approach, which is anything that is in the realm of what I would consider horror survival or horror adjacent. So like, while it's not on my top 5, Last of Us is something that's included, like I did consider. My reasons for not being on there, but being somewhere else, I'm happy to explain, but I do have some that probably wouldn't end up on yours because of that rule. Aside from that, I had no redundancy, so I tried to, again, like Castlevania for me is very much like, give you like 3 or 4 games.
Yeah, and that was another, I mean, even for series like Castlevania, like I would just pick one.
Yeah.
But, you know, the Castlevania.
But no,
like,
Resident Evil does
so
need its
better.
own rule because there are enough, they're so different that you could argue, the argument is valid. I would hear it and allow it. But I definitely do, I don't know if you wrote honorable mentions. I have the same size list of honorable mentions.
I mean, we could be here all night.
But I'm going to ramble through those at the end because they're games. Some of these are ones that do need some attention. Some of the ones people forgot. And they sent me down rabbit holes of trying to find ways to play some of these games because I want to play them again. So anyway, start with you. What's your first one? And then these are in no particular order, I'm assuming. Not mine or not.
Oh, I ranked them.
Okay.
But, which I never really did before, but like for this,
I can rank them on the fly. I can do that.
All right. No pressure.
I can do that.
Number 5, I chose Alan Wake, which honestly I didn't play until fairly recently. And it was just great. You know, it was a remaster of a game that was on PS3, but just really scary, just running around in the dark with a gun and a flashlight. And that never got old. It was just one tense encounter to one tense encounter. An interesting Stephen King-like story. And just a lot of bang for my buck.
I mean, the coolest thing about playing Alan Wake, because I played it back on the Xbox however long ago, but playing it this time on PS5, it was really cool how much they tied the story together to Control and I haven't played Prey very much, but there's enough connective tissue there. So it's really cool how they're very thoughtful, I guess, about how they created this world. And Alan Wake is certainly an interesting game. Like there's nothing else like it. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
All right, ranking these on the fly. So number 5 is going to be Manhunt, which was
I always
PlayStation
wanted
2.
to play that, but I never did. Yeah.
So I remember playing this. I think it was PlayStation 2. Was that the system it was on? But
yeah, that sounds right.
I mean, Rockstar at the time, like context setting, I think they had Grand Theft Auto 3,
the Warriors game.
And I think this was the next one. And this was like reminded me of the Running Man, except like the not funny version of the Running Man.
So 31.
Yeah.
31 before 31.
But not as ridiculous, even though it was quite ridiculous. But it was just like, first of all, it's very difficult, but it did have a lot of moments where you felt like on edge because you know, it was easy to die. You're always sneaking up on people. And most importantly, the executions were absolutely brutal. A game that did not make my list because it's not in the horror realm, but there was a Punisher game in PlayStation 2.
Oh, that was so good.
It's the best comic book video game ever made, next to like the Spider-Man game. But
that's fair.
And the Batman game. I'll take that Arkham. So man, you know, it's in good company is what I mean. But the Punisher had very similar kind of brutal. They had to make it black and white, I think.
And for some of them, because for some of the executions, they were.
And Manhunt was
very insane.
Very on the nose about its intention to be just as brutal as possible. So yeah, Manhunt, great game. I would love for them to do a remaster, but I don't think they will.
We'll see.
There's always money. It's always money in the banana stand.
Always. My number 4, and I know you mentioned this one before, and it might be slightly controversial for the
Everyone loves a good controversy.
Yeah, but I'm actually going with Friday the 13th, the game, the new one.
Wow.
Yeah,
I'm not surprised actually, because it is a good game, but yeah.
No, and it's not a perfect game, and and even though I'm playing Evil Dead, I'm still not the biggest fan of asymmetrical multiplayer with people online. I'm not a big online gamer, though I do play Avengers and a few others, but it did a really good job of making you feel like you were in a Friday the 13th movie.
Yeah.
And it had the exact same amount of plot as most of them. No, but it was very well thought out, pretty well executed. And the mechanic of the music gets louder and more intense as the player playing Jason gets closer. That never got old. And it was a good translation of what those movies are like for a video game, even better in some parts. And I love that there are skins for all the different Jasons with different abilities, like how
counselors
and then different weapons and finishers, and part 2 Jason is the only Jason who could run. 2 and 3, I think, because they run in those movies, and after that, they could just walk. Even though they could all teleport, but still, it's little things like that really made a difference.
Yeah. Did you play Dead by Daylight?
I think I played. I got it for free on I got it for free on PS Plus, and I couldn't get into it. I meant to try again. I hear it's great, and it's the bar for asymmetrical multiplayer, but unless I can be Freddy or Pinhead in every single time,
yeah, that's I know that's part of the allure, is to not be those people, but to me,
let's be honest, you want to be those people.
Let's give the people what they want.
Yeah.
All right. Friday 13th game. All right, so I'm gonna mark these so that I make sure I'm not messing this up. All right, so my number 4 is going to be Left 4 Dead 2.
Ooh, I almost put that on.
Yeah, I'm not an online gamer, or at least I haven't been in a very long time. When I was younger, in college, around then was when Xbox Live and stuff like that.
And you don't have to be for Dead,
but that's actually when I had the most fun playing online, was Left 4 Dead 2, because one, that game was hard as shit, but it was the fun kind of hard where you weren't discouraged from trying again because you were constantly making progress. But also you really did have to work together. And so talking to other people was absolutely necessary, because if you didn't, you would end up, essentially, you'd lose pretty quickly because you get separated, you can't survive on your own. I tried playing Back 4 Blood, which it's fine, but it's just not the same. There's something that's different, and they've made some good changes in some ones that I'm not a big fan of, but maybe it's just that there's some simplicity to Left 4 Dead that makes it really easy just to pick up and go with.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but Left 4 Dead 2 is it was a better game than the first one. It's how do you make this game even better? And I sunk probably 60 something hours plus just on the online alone.
It's just so much fun.
It is.
It's waves of zombies coming after you,
and it knows what it's doing. It knows that it's tongue in cheek, but it's also it gets tense. It's really tense when you get a flood of zombies. And it's one of the few games that I think does that feeling of feeling overwhelmed very well. Whereas other games will just overwhelm you by lots of people, where it feels this is absurdly difficult. This felt like a nice progression.
You're overwhelmed, but you still have a chance.
Yeah. And each character was fun to play. You never felt like you were getting shafted by playing one or the other, and their quips were good. They had, the storylines they put to the single player, that's the part that's missing from a lot of these, asymmetrical and heavy multiplayer games, is that they're just not giving you that other single player experience that there's something to it. And that's what made, I think, Left 4 Dead games even better, is that the online was great, but the fact you could go solo,
there was a campaign,
and there was a story.
Yeah.
There was 4 different campaigns. I think they had different campaigns based on themes. They really thought that out.
And Evil Dead, going back to the Evil Dead video game, it sort of does that. But I still can't get past that first single mission. It's too hard. And it sucks because that's you pick up weapons all throughout the game in supply boxes in various places, but you rarely get a chainsaw. And in the first Evil Dead like mission, solo mission, you start off with the chainsaw. And I don't know about you, but I signed up for the Evil Dead game to chainsaw some fucking
all 4 of them. I've always signed up for the same thing.
Yeah,
boomstick and chainsaw.
That's all you need. And like, yeah, you know, I'll run around and collect other stuff, but like the only time I can like reliably start off with a chainsaw and continue to chainsaw people is a version of the game that I can't beat. I can't even progress to the next level. Like, I'll beat it someday, maybe. I don't know.
As someone who's been getting into a lot of roguelike games, it definitely feels like those where it's a matter of memorization because they do the same things. Like the 3rd level on Evil Dead, the game, is all about timing. You have like 12 minutes.
Stealth level?
Now you have 12 minutes to like do a bunch of things that, you know, require a lot of like knowing what to grab, what not to grab. So I find that somewhat exciting and engaging, and I like that they made those into episodes, but also agree that it should have been a more thought out actual story.
Yeah, or at least
something that's a little bit easier, or
yeah.
able to have difficulty settings in there.
Yeah.
So anyway, Evil Dead, the game's not on my list. So, but yeah, number 4, Left 4 Dead 2.
My number 3 is a game that was beloved enough to get a sequel, but maybe even beloved's the wrong word because I never hear anybody talk about it, but it's freaking great, and that's The Evil Within.
Oh,
the first Evil Within, which is just awesome. It's like, I remember when I first played it, it felt like the apotheosis of survival horror because it was made by the guy who did Resident Evil 4, but I don't know why he wasn't working in the Resident Evil world anymore. But it was just great. I mean, Resident Evil 4 is a fantastic game, as we may or may not hear about later, but it felt like all the correct lessons learned from Resident Evil 4 just put into this new IP. And there's not much of a story, but I love that you're just playing your way through horror movie archetypes. It's like the serious version of Zombies Ate My Neighbors at some parts. And it works. And it's challenging, but you feel like you have a chance. And there are a lot of those tense moments all throughout where you're like, all right, how many bullets do I have? How many matches do I have? I got this crossbow. Let's go.
I had this one, like, I started playing this one when it came out and I dropped it for a while and I went back to it after a few years. It felt like playing a Lovecraft game. Like, you know, the kind of what you're doing, like a little bit of like your character's very noirish detective kind of person. Yeah, I dug the shit out of it in the second one too. It's not on my list, but it definitely was one I had a hard time not including because of how fun it is. And it's one of those games that you definitely will want to go back to after some time. And like another game on my list I'll talk about is very similar, but
yeah, the second one's not on my list. I didn't find it as good. There's like it's like they did this with Last of Us 2. There's like an open world element that they just kind of abandoned halfway through, and I just wasn't feeling it. But that first one,
I like the second one well enough, but I agree the first one was so good that they didn't really elevate it much in the second one.
Yeah.
Like there's a Devil May Cry series is very similar. It's very uneven in that way. Again, didn't make my list, but all right. So your number 3 is Evil Within, and my number 3 is BioShock, the game that you didn't include. And here's why I'm including it. I'm gonna adhere to.
That I thought about it, but
I'm not going to
totally defensible.
I'm not adhering to your rule, but I will put in my case, which is it is genuinely creepy in parts. The content particularly is very dark to the extent that, like, while it's very dystopian, it also exists in this world that isn't the future, it's the past. And while it does heavily, I'd say, leverage sci-fi in some way, it also is as much influenced by horror, by the fact that the people that cut themselves and, like, you know, the design.
Slicers,
and without going into, if you haven't played, actually no, fuck it, if you haven't played BioShock at this point, like,
don't ruin the twist though, because it's one of the greatest twists in the history of gaming.
I mean,
and that's not hyperbole, but those 3 words, let me just tell you, it's a gaming innovation that it's like,
it is a mind fuck.
Yeah.
is one of the first time. There's only 2 times where a game I felt has actually fucked with me, and this was this time and in Metal Gear Solid on PlayStation 1 when you had to like take out the memory card and like all that shit, or when you had to look in the back of the case to find the code. Like that's
goddamn,
that's ingenuity. But BioShock to me is one of the most replayable games of all time. It's a story that like even, and especially if you leave it like 5 years, like now it's so ingrained in my head. I played it like 4 times through. That like the twist, like I know it's there, but you always forget that it's coming.
Yeah.
In the game because it's so engrossing.
It's insidious.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah, and it's gnarly. So I think BioShock 2 is, and as excited as I am that they're bringing it to some form of media. I think they're doing a movie, right?
I feel like they've been talking about doing that forever. Gore Verbinski wanted to do like an R-rated, like $100 million BioShock, which signed me the fuck up for that.
I mean, yes and no. Because here's the thing: like from a video game perspective, that's a game that be hard to watch something like that and feel like the movie's doing it any sort of justice. You know what I mean? Or the game, they could do any justice to the game because the experience you have. Again, the twist, right? The twist doesn't work in a movie.
Yeah, that's true. It's like Mass Effect, where it's like you can't. Yeah, you're in those shoes,
which is an amazing game, and the only game that makes you actually care about characters dying. But anyway, we're not here to talk about Mass Effect. But
BioShock Infinite, the third BioShock game,
never played all the way through.
What?
Never played all the way through. I haven't because I always get distracted by something else that like I just end up dropping it halfway through. I never finished it.
BioShock Infinite is also one of the greatest games of all time. It's totally different, but
the movement mechanic is really interesting to me.
That's another one where like when it was over, I just had to sit.
You need a minute?
Yeah, I needed
Last of Us 2
in a great way. Like, the first Last of Us.
I did not want to hit the buttons, but they make you do things.
In Last of Us 2 or Last of No, there's one quick time event at the end of Last of Us 2 where I just start, I'm just like my voice just rises and I'm like, why am I doing this? But but
it's the only time a game that makes you hate yourself.
Yeah, but that's kind of the point at times. But BioShock Infinite, please, Matt.
I will.
For the love of God,
I will play it. I will play it. I'm a man of my word on this. So
from the beginning. Yeah.
Maybe it'll be on the list we just done someday. Maybe it'll change my life and I'll owe you everything for this. So BioShock's number 3. Yeah. What's your number 2?
My number 2, adhering to the 1 per franchise rule, is kind of the obvious choice, but it's Castlevania Symphony of the Night.
Same.
Really? And number 2?
Yeah. Well, I didn't have these ranked, but like the way in my head, the way I was going to play this out was this was going to be second, and then my first. So it means we both have a Resident Evil game as the first one, I'm imagining, but I don't think we have the same one.
We'll see.
Yeah.
But it's the best Castlevania game of all time. It is one of the best side-scrolling games of all time that came out just as the PlayStation came out, as we're discovering 3D gaming and like the way that changed the gaming universe. Here's a side-scrolling game that just like comes out and just completely lays to waste most of the games that came out along with it. And I'll tell you, when I got an Xbox 360 and I was looking around at like the arcade and I found out that I could buy Symphony of the Night again, I was like doing that. And even though I had this nice piece of next-gen hardware, I was just playing Symphony of the Night like over and over. I have 200% in that game. I flipped that castle down and reversed it multiple times. That's why, and like all the Castlevania Nintendo DS games rip that, like they're just trying to do Symphony of the Night in the palm of your hand, and that's fine, and they know because it's it's one of the best games ever, one of the best horror games for sure.
I mean, I think it's one of my favorite games because how good it is, but it's also one of the most influential games because every single roguelike game today owes everything to Castlevania Symphony of the Night. Very little instruction, very little direction. It's about discovery and trial and error. There's brutal saving and
brutal bosses,
but it never deters you from wanting to go back. And I died in that game probably more times than most games I've played. And I've also purchased it a whopping total of 6 times.
Jesus.
Yes.
Can you name all the platforms?
I bought it twice on PlayStation because I lost my original disc and I bought the Classics one that they reissued. I repurchased it on Xbox Live Arcade. I got it from a PSP, which I just found today and was playing with this morning. And then I also purchased Dracula X on, or some not my PSP, PS Vita. I bought it on PS Vita when they did PS1 games on Vita. And RIP the Vita, best fucking handheld of all time. And then they had the PSP version of Dracula X Chronicles, which includes Castlevania Symphony of the Night. So, and I was this close to buying it on PlayStation 4 today because
the classics.
Yeah, because there's a Requiem Games put out Dracula X, Rondo of Blood, and Castlevania Symphony of the Night, and $20 package on PlayStation 4 in 4K.
Is that on the PlayStation Store?
Yes. This is not promotion, but you should absolutely buy it if you're. I mean, I'm probably still going to buy it because, it's one of the best games of all time, and it introduced one of the best Castlevania characters of all time, and the opening is just couldn't get any better. But and it's the game that still holds up. Like it's still fun. It's still quick. It doesn't be like even by modern standards, it holds up extremely well. Whereas you cannot say the same about a lot of the previous Castlevania games. And I saw that like GameSpot put out that they said Castlevania 4 was the best one, and they can go fuck themselves because that is absolutely not true.
That's clickbait garbage.
Yeah, that is. They put Symphony of the Night is number 2. No one puts Baby in the corner. No one puts Alucard in the corner. I'm sorry.
Was that Super Castlevania 4?
Yes, that's not, no.
It's fine, but like just because you can swing the whip in any direction doesn't mean it's the best. Show your work.
Symphony of the Night showed that you could imbue RPG elements into an action platformer. And I can't think of too many other games that were doing that. Maybe like a Square Enix game. Maybe like a Final Fantasy game, but even those were turn-based. So
yeah.
Anyway, my number 2 and your number 2, Symphony of the Night. All right, so what's your number 1?
Okay. Let's say what entry it is
at the same time.
Okay. 1, 2, 3.
2.
Yeah. And
way to bury the lead with that 4 comment earlier.
Yeah. Well, it was 2 or it was 4. And Resident Evil.
Okay, the remake of the original, or you differentiate?
See, that's the thing. It's not even fair. I can't differentiate.
I include them both. Yeah, I include them both.
Yeah, but I mean, look, I'm sure if I went back and played Resident Evil 2 on PlayStation 1, it might be a little janky, but I'd get through it. I would get through both of the story modes, and that remake is just it's great. It's one of the best remakes of any game. Just fantastic. And look, 4 is a better game than Resident Evil 2. Overall, it just is. It's like the best version of Resident Evil as the horror action hybrid.
It's a third person.
Yeah. But Resident Evil 2 is a horror game. Resident Evil 2 will fuck your shit up. It will scare you.
Yep.
And it's like I remember like when
it's very it's very hope-like. Like the first Resident Evil game was punishingly difficult puzzles, but you still that was the hardest thing about it. In the second one, it's punishing how little ammunition and resources you have to survive what is a significantly more onslaught of zombies in the second one.
It really is survival horror. And just from the get-go, the crash in the beginning, where you're like, well, those are zombies, I should shoot them. But no, oh God, I have to run. And just the music, or the lack of music in Resident Evil 2, just there's danger around every corner. Every time the camera changes, you flinch a little bit because there might be something right there waiting for you.
I feel like Resident Evil 2 is if Hitchcock made a Assault on Precinct movie, if George Romero and Hitchcock collaborated on an Assault on Precinct 13 movie, because there's this mystery to Resident Evil 2 that you have in the first one, but it's a bit more obscure. Where in the second one, it's more direct about starting to get more about Umbrella and their role in all of this, and basically how they've left this town to rot. And you get introduced to all these interesting characters: Claire Redfield, Chris Valentine, Leon.
Chris is in the first one, but yeah, Leon, yeah.
Ada. And yeah, I love Resident Evil 3 as well, but not
Never
there's something
played
about
3, but I always heard it was good.
it's good, it's short. It's just really short.
Okay.
Like that's the only and Resident Evil 2 is actually not that long either, but it's so difficult that it's one of the few, like it's one of those games, and I don't know, we're gonna date myself, but like the walkthrough guide, you did not used to be able to look up online. And so you had to like take pictures somehow.
No shame. When I played Resident Evil 7 for the first time, I played it with a guy. I looked up game facts. I'm like, no, this is a first person.
Well, I do that now. Like if I get a little
no, but like the walkthrough every step of the way. I don't look at the walkthrough every step of the way yet, but with Resident Evil 7, I'm like, all right, got it up on the wiki, got it on the screen.
And just for shits and giggles, if you had to pick one of the modern Resident Evil games that's adopted the first person view, which one do you prefer?
I never played 8, but I really want to play 8. Do you have 8?
It's a digital.
But 7 is great. 7's a big recommend. 7 to me is like
it's a Lucio Fulci movie.
I was gonna say it's like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre video game before the actual Texas Chainsaw Massacre video game comes out.
Another asymmetrical,
it's not about biting. It's just about hiding from them and like.
I don't know. I'm not gonna judge it yet, but
yeah, I'm gonna play it. Look, it's a day one release for me, but I'm just like, what are we gonna do?
I don't know if I picked 7 probably only because I really like 8, and it's super polished and super great. But there's something about 7. The second time I played through it, I was like, this is so inspired by the Beyond. It's not like I'm surprised I missed it.
Now that you're saying it with the New Orleans
and like the way that there zombies, like what they look like, the filth of the place, like it just reminded me of that layer at the bottom, right? So I've got some honorable mentions.
Okay.
I'm just gonna run through them. I'm gonna give them time. Feel free to add your own, but Last of Us is on there. I mean, it's great.
Maybe one of my top 5 games of all time. Maybe top 3.
It's one of the few games that actually does make you feel something. And that's a very big feat in gaming, I would say. Devil May Cry, aesthetically, that's my vibe. Like gothic, but big monsters. Really even stranger Japanese heroes who have massive swords and obscure guns.
I've tried to play a few of them. I tried to play like 3 and 5, and I only got so far. And it seems like it would be up my alley because it's guns and knives.
It's overwhelming. Demons. Like to me, it reminds me of like what I love is that beat 'em up aspect. Like it's about streaks and combos and like making it like basically just this massive display of continuous violence. Which if we might try the Bayonetta games, which have no fucking plot whatsoever, but they're super fun and really interesting design, like aesthetically.
Quick story about the Bayonetta games. When the first one came out, a friend of mine and I smoked a little marijuana and thought we would like play through Bayonetta, maybe like give the controller back and forth.
It's a nice Sunday afternoon.
And we there was a point where we looked at each other and we went, the first cinematic is still going. Like our minds were just like,
it makes no sense.
And we didn't even get to actually play yet. Like it was just the cinematic. And I'm like, this feels like it's been going on for an hour and it's ridiculous and amazing. More.
It feels like you're fighting a bunch of porcelain dolls from Home Goods that have grown in size.
And gained sentience.
Yeah, and gained sentience and holy powers. Because you're actually fighting the good people. Bayonetta is a trip. Definitely smoke drugs and like play it because it doesn't make sense.
Smoke drugs, be gay, do crime.
Yeah, all those things, and watch horror movies. The Thing game on PS2.
Oh, I always wanted to play it, but I never did.
Oh, it's so good, and it is so much better than it has any business being. That it's absurd that no more people don't talk about it. Alien Isolation is probably the scariest. Like the best game to ever simulate what the first Alien movie is probably like. Yeah. The only downside is I wanted to use more guns, But there's a very good reason why you don't want to use them. So that's the reason like games like Outlast didn't end up on my list because like I don't like being completely powerless. But the last one on my list is one that some of you will judge me, you might judge me, but I guarantee if you play this, it will change your fucking life. It's called Doki Doki Literature Co-op. Have you ever heard about this game?
No, I've heard of Doki Doki Panic, which is what Super Mario 2 turned into.
Okay,
but
this is not that.
Okay.
So there's probably like 2 of you of the 5 that watch this who maybe know what I'm talking about. And that's if I'm lucky. But it is the best way to describe it without ruining it is a Japanese dating simulator game that plays out more like a book. But that is how it starts, and that is not how it ends. And so when we're talking about games that fuck with you, this game actually fucks with you. And it's not even so much a game as it is like a interactive book. Not like the Telltale stuff, because it is presented like in,
text.
It does look like a Japanese dating game for the first, I'm telling you, like an hour you're gonna play this. Like I had to play it twice because the first time I started playing, I'm like, I feel really weird playing this because this is and like no shame, like that's your game, but to me that's not my game. But I went back to it. Like I need to see what I obviously didn't play it long enough. It turns out I didn't. I was about like 10 minutes away from what would have totally changed the game. And once the game changes, it gets dark, like really fucking dark. And by the end of it, it's the kind like I cannot undersell the impact of when you finish playing it. And it's only like maybe 4 hours. Like it's not a long thing, but it's a lot to get through because the first chunk of it is very grinding and like this is really boring, like dating app conversation. Then it flips on you. And by the end of it, like I was still thinking about it for a week. It's like, wow, that is the most shook. And someone told me this before I played it, that gave this same level of enthusiasm. So like, I was like, there's no way it's going to meet this level of hype. But yeah, this is a fucked up game. And it is something you will never forget.
What is it, a newer game? Like what systems?
You can get it on, I think you can play it for free on like Steam. I think you can download it. Okay. And there's a version on Switch you can download as well. It might also be on other platforms, but I played it on Switch. But it might be, I know you can get it for free, I think, on Steam. And then you could also probably get it, I think, on the PlayStation Store as well. But it's, okay. Again, don't feel weird when you play it at first. It is weird, but then when it ends up becoming the game it's going to be, it's wild.
Cool. My only honorable mention, I guess, would be the Nightmare on Elm Street NES game, which is it's just, it's a pure guilty pleasure. I can't in good conscience put it on my hallowed top 5 list, but I love those movies and I love playing that game. Even though it didn't make a whole lot of sense, it was fun to be a dream warrior. It was fun to fight Freddy, and childhood, man. Yeah, I used to play that a lot as a kid just because of the Nightmare on Elm Street game, and I don't think I got very far, to be honest. But let me tell you, that Friday
and the Friday the 13th game.
That Friday the 13th game can fuck off right to hell. Yep.
It's a motherfucker.
I think I might have beaten Nightmare on Elm Street the game though with a friend because you can do the 4-person co-op. So that was possible, but like Friday the 13th, like no, they didn't tell you anything about what to do in that game until someone made a strategy guide for it like a few years ago. Like better late than never. Yeah,
I have no desire to go back to that one though. That was just that's bad.
That was just punishment.
Yeah. Well, that's the list. Yeah, that's our Macabre Monthly. If you have other, we did it. If you have your top 5 and you want to put them in the comments of something, do that. And until next time, be good, have fun.
Be gay, do crimes.
Be gay, do crimes, and watch horror movies.
Watch horror.